So as mentioned, my name is Mark Sage. I'm the Executive Director of the AREA, which stands for Augmented Reality Enterprise Alliance. I'm going to do a little bit of background. I know a lot of you will know some of this stuff, but I want to really get into some of the use cases that we're seeing around the world with some ROI in them as well, and give you an idea of what companies are doing. And then a little bit about what the area is doing and its members. I'll explain a little bit about what that is to help overcome some of the barriers to adoption. So most of you will know this. What we focus on, as in the area, is that augmented reality bit. We see the real world. Now, actually, we've expanded that to also include the VR pass-through piece. Okay, now we focus a little bit more on the industrial side. If anybody is thinking of using a VR pass-through on in the shop floor and things like that, I can assure you it's not going to happen, but we're actually doing some research on it at the moment. But anything where we can still see the real world, we include within our scope. Now, AR has been around for a long, long time, okay, back in 1989. I believe this is David, but I kind of get confused between David and Tom. He works for Boeing, and he is doing some work for a wiring diagram with a very rudimentary wearable kind of device. Hold that thought, because I'm coming back to some of the use cases that Boeing are doing at the moment, and they're still working on this kind of problem. No one from Gartner in the room, is there? Thank goodness for that. Gotta love the Gartner hype cycle curve. I do this because I think it's a really interesting journey where we've been with AR. So back in 2004, goodness me, sort of however many 20-odd years ago, it came on. Now remember, this is the emerging technologies one. A lot of people say, oh, well, AR is already mature, but this was back in 2004. They added it to their Gartner hype cycle. Disappeared in 2007. I don't know if it was a typo or anything like that, but I keep trying to find out and ask them, but it went. As we get into 2010, we're in the peak of inflated expectations. Now, people would argue we're probably potentially still there. But remember, this is in the kind of emerging technologies piece. Trough of disillusionment, where everyone's saying, this is really great, but it's not actually happening. We get to 2018, and it's now a mature technology. Now, hands up who thinks that AR is a mature technology. Okay, so it's an interesting bit, that Gartner hype cycle bit. They want to move it into their next bit, but we've still got work to do. Any other analysts in the room? Whew, done all right there. They do come up with some wonderful numbers, don't you? If you ever cover or look at some of the numbers they talk about, 10.5 billion in 2027, 46.9 million augmented AR headsets sold by 2027. I don't know. I think it's an interesting bit following them. We've certainly moving into and looking a lot more around the AR and AI glasses, but I'll come back to that a little bit later. But if you're an enterprise, you have got to be looking at this technology. Okay? If you want to survive on a global platform or in a global experience, you need to have this technology. And the reasons why, it's that it's improving your performance as a company, as a CEO or a CTO or a CIO. In fact, it's really interesting. When I try to speak to companies, no one really knows where to put immersive technology, AR and VR. They don't know if it's a kind of a general manager or if it's a CIO, CTO, or any of those other things. But what we do know from the experience, and I've been lucky enough to do this role for 11 years, one of the great things is you can get relevant, contextual, and up-to-date information to the workers when they need it. Now, that's really important in all sorts of different industries. You probably know a whole bunch of different use cases, but getting that information when they need it, otherwise, and I've seen it happen, they say, I'm not quite sure what to do here. I'm going to go and have a look at a piece of paper or an old PC. I've actually seen this in one company where you've got a huge, great big LAN cable and a huge, great big power cable, and they're rolling this Windows 95 PC up and down the thing, and it does happen, okay? The second bit is about resource management. Okay, now we know we've all lived through COVID. AR exploded in COVID times because they couldn't have the workers in the factory. So if something went wrong, what do? Well, the remote assistance use case was kind of born. Seen lots and lots of companies use that very successfully. Interestingly, I don't know if you think the same, but I've seen that wane a little bit because people wanted to get back into the factories and stuff like that. But it's still a whole bunch about managing your resources in the most effective way. And the other use case we're seeing more and more is about real-time compliance, kind of inspection use cases. Do you need to go and travel to somewhere as a third party to go and inspect what they've done? And in many regulated industries, you need to check the work that you've done twice. So a lot about improving performance. What does it mean for the bottom line? Well, it's about reducing time, minimizing errors, and lowering costs. And this is why I said to survive in a global environment, companies need to be looking at this technology to make sure that they can compete. So a little bit about the area. I mentioned before, as you can read, it's a global membership-funded, not-for-profit alliance helping to accelerate the adoption of enterprise AR. I'll go onto a little bit more, but just recently, on the 1st of October, we were taken over by the EDMA, Enterprise Data Management Alliance, or Association, sorry. We've actually got a sister company called the Digital Twin Consortium and a standards organization, all in this bigger pot. I actually think the more I talk to the people and the more I come to these events and stuff like that, data is playing a more and more important part to the delivery of good AR solutions. Okay, so you can have a little look about the EDMA, but the ability to manage your content and get it into an AR solution, and more importantly, when you've done something, can that be a collaboration or you've changed something, getting it back into the company content and systems and stuff like that is crucial. So that's something we're going to certainly be focused on a little bit more, that the data part is going to play a bigger and bigger picture of it. To give you an idea who's kind of involved in the area, we're in 3 different segments. There's the enterprises that are deploying the technology, so the likes of Boeing, ExxonMobil, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin. As you can imagine, a bigger group of the providers of the technology, ranging from big platform guys like PTC, Dassault, TeamViewer, but right the way down to startups. The hardware side, don't really need to tell you, but it's still kind of a tough gig. Though we are seeing more and more hardware guys. We're lucky enough to have the Magic Leap, DigiLens, Raven Computing, to mention a few. And then the non-commercial organizations are a combination of universities, research institutes, government agencies, standards organizations. So the ability to bring all of that knowledge together to help overcome some of the barriers to adoption is very, very powerful. Okay, what I want to do now is to actually talk about some real-life examples of this technology being deployed and the kind of ROI. This report is years old. It's seriously years old, okay? And you can see, you can do a search on the bottom bit. I'm still using it now because it gives you a good overview of some of serious numbers that companies have done. I'm going to go through a few just to give you a bit of an idea. But Xerox, okay? It's a simple use case. They used to send their technician out to fix a job. If they couldn't fix it, they'd have to come away or speak to somebody. It took time. You know, there was CO2 because they had to travel there and stuff like that. They were able to get there and resolve it without actually being on site. Okay, they can use, it doesn't have to be a wearable device. It can be a tablet, it can be a phone. But that ability to talk through with somebody and show them by using AR to what problems to solve, what buttons to press, what things. You know, you've probably heard the classic, you know, they travel for hours and hours, even days for days, to go and press a button and stuff like that. It happens all the time. So Xerox have done a great job, 76% saving, all off their bottom line. Looking at kind of manufacturing assembly, we're going back to our friends at Boeing. So Boeing are still using, or have now developed, a really good solution for doing the wiring. Wiring in a fuselage of an airplane is very complicated. If you get it wrong, you are literally taking that fuselage all the way back again. So the bottom left-hand corner, that is their visualization of the wiring. They're using HoloLens. They're actually using tablets now in other devices. And they've showed a 90% improvement of first-time quality. It's not always about doing it faster. It's about getting it right first time. So they've done it. They've also created a 30% reduction in the time spent doing the job. You know, it costs them an absolute fortune. Not only do they delay when they do it wrong, it's all the rework they have to do afterwards. So it's a great use case. They've actually developed a solution called BARC, Boeing Augmented Reality Kit, done it in-house with their own developers and things like that. But it's a great example of a good use case. Newport News Shipbuilding, we've probably all watched Top Gun and Top Gun 2 and stuff like that. They make the big aircraft carriers that the airplanes come down and land on. It takes between 7 and 9 years to build one of those. And they're built in compartments, okay? So what they do is they build one, they bring it all together. Massive, great big undertaking. Historically, they used to get, when they had to inspect it at the end of the build, they'd get a piece of paper and go out and go, yeah, maybe, maybe not. It needed a specialist to do it and took a long time. It took them up to 36 hours. Now, very simply, they take a tablet, a ruggedized tablet. They can overlay what should have been done. If it's done correctly, perfect. The time it's taken them to do that inspection has gone down to 90 minutes. Okay, a 96% reduction in that inspection task. Who wouldn't want to do something like that? The time and effort spent on that is huge. And you can imagine there's lots of other industries that have a similar kind of setup there. So it's another good use case. Maintenance repair. Again, Bosch was a very active member within the area. They're doing work with electric cars. The problem is with electric cars, there's many different models, many different parts. It's growing all the time. So they've used a combination of tablets and wearable devices that allows the engineers to actually put their hands in the engine and still see what they're doing, rather than having to come out and look at a piece of paper or trying to put a tablet in there and stuff like that. A 15% saving on each task they've done. Okay, so I haven't got the kind of full numbers, but just imagine every time you do a task, you can save a small amount of time. Put together will make a huge amount of time. And I'm sure there are other use cases around kind of maintenance, electric cars, and things like that as well. So as you can see, there's lots of really interesting use cases. I personally think as an industry, in fact, I know, we don't do enough of pushing the use cases. Okay, we don't collect them, we don't communicate them as an industry, and if there are people out there that are working on kind of AR and case studies and things like that, we are trying, and I'll explain in a minute, we're trying to build the biggest repository of case studies. Because if someone can go and have a look at it and say, well, look, Boeing's doing this, or whoever's doing that, Lockheed Martin's doing this, it's a great source of information. So if you've got any, please send me, I'll share my information email in a second. Okay, I'm just going to play a video, and the reason why, it's from a company. What I really like, it's about their combining different use cases together. Okay, the biggest issue I think is we focus on one kind of delivery, one bit focus. So the cost of ownership for a company is quite high. If you can simply deliver a number of different use cases together, you can do some real benefit. So I'll just let this play and talk over it. Again, this is a kind of a maintenance issue. It's a company called ViewR. First thing they're doing is wayfinding, and I've noticed there's a few wayfinding companies in here. Very simple, get you to where they need to be very quick and efficiently. Second thing is, you need to find out what the problem is. Okay, simple guide. Is this instruction right? Is it in the right kind of pressure bits? Okay, maybe not. So he's going to check. It's given him a next step, very simple. As he goes into that, there's a potential, he needs to do some work, so you can see what he's doing. He's taking the stuff off. So that's the second bit where he's given them a kind of a step-by-step guide, but there's still an issue. They're still not quite sure what to do. So next thing, we go on to the kind of third use case, which is the remote assistance one. He's now calling somebody to say, help, I can't do it. What's wrong? Please help me out here. Getting some information. What you'll see, and you've probably seen it many times before, the expert can be anywhere in the world, and he or she is going to use an AR overlay to say, well, you need to press this, do that, whatever you need to do. Okay? And once it's completed, that last little step now, he's using AI to make sure that that task, which is making sure that the locks on it, has been done as well. So lots and lots of really interesting layered use cases. And I like that because it allows the company to get more than one benefit. Okay? So when you're thinking about these use cases, if you can bring them together, it really helps. Jumping back to the area to give you an idea of what we're trying to do to help the ecosystem, there's 4 kind of strategic pillars. The first one is about delivering thought leadership. We're working really hard to think about what business decision makers need. And we've boiled that down to 4 things. They want to understand what problems need to be solved or can be solved, so the use cases. They want to see problems that have been solved, case studies. They want to understand the technology, but most importantly is around the ROI, the return on investment, and I'll come back to that. We have a great opportunity to network. A lot of our members are experts. They have their technical fellowship through doing AR. The educate side, we see a massive skills gap, so we're actively working with universities. But probably where most of the work goes on is about reducing barriers to adoption. We call it, and we've hopefully coined the phrase, pilot purgatory. Yeah, you kind of do some stuff, it's really cool, everybody likes it in the organization, just doesn't get deployed. Just doesn't get deployed widely across the organization. So understanding this, we've created a number of committees. They're simply monthly meetings where the area members can come along on some of the biggest barriers. So we can see security, safety, requirements. And the other ones, academy, marketing, human factors, and research. And I'm just going to touch on a few of them as we go through. So the first thing we've got is, and again, this is free to use. You can go to the area website now, and there's a bunch of use cases. Generic problem statements. You can see navigation, remote assistance, maintenance, inspection. Yeah, please feel free to go and do it. If you've got any comments and stuff like that, feel free to email back because we want to help each other to get these kind of statements right. The second thing is a set of requirements. In my experience, what happens is a company said, oh yeah, no, I'm really interested in doing something, but our process, our purchasing process means we have to go and speak to 3 companies or get 3 quotes. And to do that, you need a set of requirements. Well, then everything slows down again because you have to build those requirements. So we've literally built the requirements. Let's see if this works. From the use case bit, no, it doesn't. From the use case down to these low-level things, connectivity, integration, authoring. All of these are kind of tools that we built, and you can go and download that now. Again, go to the area website, look at the, I think it's called the requirements tool, and you can download those. Security has been, and still is, a pretty big issue when it comes to deploying AR. So we're lucky enough to have the chief technologist from Raytheon, who's the chair of our security committee, and we've created a whole bunch, again, of free content that you can use. So you can see here, the security infographic, you can click on different bits, it comes up with a whole bunch of information on the side. We've done another one on zero trust. MDMs used to be a bit of a challenge. We're lucky enough, and they're here as well, Arbor XR, who are an area member, and Manage XR. But just being able to get the devices on the network has been a pain in the bottom. So, we've got this questionnaire to find out what the requirements are for MDMs and things like that. And then we did a really big piece of work, which I'd like, hopefully, more people to use. So if you're enterprise thinking of deploying the technology and you're interested or concerned about security, you can use this maturity self-assessment, maturity model self-assessment. It's very simple. It comes up with a bunch of questions, and you say, on different levels within the questions, where are you now? Where would you like to be? Having filled all that in, you'll get a report to say, okay, well, these are the kind of things you need to do within your organization to improve your security maturity, which means easier to deploy these devices into your network and stuff like that. So we're trying to do things that help the ecosystem. On the safety side, quite often there's concerns from safety managers. They can be one of the barriers to adoption. So we've got this safety infographic. Looks a bit like the security one, but it's focused on the safety side. We've also created this playbook, again, a downloadable resource. Can talk about these different areas from environmental concerns before you're using AR, after using the device, risk assessment, and things like that. So there's a whole bunch of content there. And then finally, I'm just going to touch on our research. Now, this is a kind of a member-only benefit, but every 6 months we say to the area members, what would you like to research? What information would really help you? Not academic, lovely, this is going to happen in 10 years. What will really help you now? Members make a proposal, they vote, and whichever research gets the most votes, the area pays for and delivers that research. So you can see we've done a whole bunch of stuff on security, ROI calculators. We have a couple of ROI calculators we've created now. One of them on the kind of maintenance use case. One of them I'll come to in a second on the inspection one. Picking some of the other ones, barriers to adoption in manufacturing actually focus on worker acceptance, something that's often missed out, especially, I would say, in Europe, worker councils and things like that. We've done one on 5G and AR, so quite a comprehensive piece of how those technologies. It was really exciting to see a company from Turkey that's actually using a 5G SIM because you can get security and coverage and do an on-prem solution, it's often what enterprises need. Going to the cloud for big defense companies is not going to happen, I'm sorry to say, at the moment. A few others, I'm just rushing through this, just touch on number 12, which was an interesting one. I don't know about you, but often in companies, they have one device, multiple users. From a security perspective, that's a no-no, because you don't know who's actually using the device because they log into the device. So you've actually created some Unity code that allows you to uniquely identify who the user is. Yeah, scrubs out one of those other security concerns that the IT security teams would have. And I mentioned on the 13th, we've done a piece on inspection, so there's an ROI calculator and some other bits. And then finally, I'm coming to the end, you'll be pleased to know we've done one on barriers to adoption, on low-code, no-code solution benchmarking. Visual positioning systems is another big theme at the moment, so we've done a piece of research on what's happening there. And then we're looking at the viability of pass-through on AR devices in manufacturing. So let's get some information that either proves or disproves that having VR glasses on a shop floor is not going to happen. The other thing we're doing is also measuring the performance between a pass-through and a see-through to see if there's a difference in actual timing and performance and stuff like that. Last couple of things, we always have some strategic initiatives. One of the ones is we've got very close to and actually met the guys here from Android XR. We want to make sure they're really excited, we're really excited, but does Android XR allow you to deploy devices in enterprises? Let's be honest, Google's not had a long-term thing with enterprises. They're trying, so we're now working with them really closely to make sure they understand the challenges for enterprises for deploying Google Android-based devices. And I mentioned before that repository. So again, if you have any case studies, please send it to me. We just want a repository that people can easily check and get information they want. And then finally, and I promise I'll be quiet there, and I'm happy to take any questions. Can't get away from AI at the moment. So we've done a lot of work on the combination of XR and AI, and what we're trying to do is really understand the current use cases and what people are thinking in the future, and then working together to overcome some of those issues, standardize best practice. We're not a standards organization. I know we've got some people in here that are actually from standards organization, but we definitely want to drive and work with those standards organizations to make sure that we get best practices. Anyway, that was a whistle-stop tour of kind of the things that we're up to. Very interested if anybody wants to chat, just generally what's happening with the ecosystem, if you're interested in area membership and stuff like that. But we together have got to help each other. And I know we are, events like this are great, but anything we can do to promote the ecosystem, to promote the use cases, and to help each other is good in my book. Happy to take any questions. You don't have to clap if you don't want to, but you can do if you want.
Any questions?
Go on, clap.
No questions? Yes.
The address to send a question on by mail?
Yeah, please.
Where is it?
To mark@thearea.org.
Mark?
That's me.
A lot of questions.
Please
Too
do,
many
yeah.
questions
Please send
to
me
ask.
an email. And you can look at thearea.org. That is the website. So
Anyone else?
I'm good on 1980s music and sport. So.
Is the group global, or and how big is the group right now as part of the organization?
It's about 52 members. It very much is global. I'd say global. We're about 60% US, about 40% in Europe, with a few in kind of Dubai area and stuff like that. We've had some Chinese members before, but time zones are quite difficult. And a lot of the benefit you get is just being in those meetings, talking to other people, but getting into that level of detail that you sometimes get at these events, but it's difficult to do in your own company. And learning from other people, that's a really kind of strong benefit. So yeah, that's kind of what we're shaped at the moment.
Hi, you showed a lot of use cases. I was more interested in the medical field. What can you tell me about what's more going on?
So, and again, we had Medtronic, who's been a member for a number of years. Unfortunately, they went through a reorganization and seem to have lost all of their XR staff as well. So lots of different use cases, and you've probably seen lots of them here, ranging from training. Training is a big, big use case, okay? And to be honest, every event I go to, you see a lot of VR training, which is great. So I kind of get that. I certainly like the ones where you get the tactile feeling of doing surgery and stuff like that. I don't think it'd be too long, and we've always seen some examples of it. You're using AR so someone can guide you through that process. Okay, now I'm not sure at this stage I want to be the person led down being operated on, but you can see in not too distant future, you know, if you can't get there and it's a matter of life and death, why wouldn't you use, you know, AR remote assistance to guide somebody through that kind of process? So lots, but also in healthcare, there's kind of manufacturing things. You have to make things and stuff like that. One of the interesting use cases I've been talking recently in the pharma industry is they want to be able to quickly set up a distribution and a build, you know, making drugs and stuff like that if there's a pandemic. Now, a combination of using VR for design, AR for build, AR for maintenance, AR for decommissioning, and be able to do that quickly, you've got one digital footprint. You can get the content all done. You can reuse that content for other places and stuff like that. It will definitely speed up that build, maintain, decommission bit as well. So I'm certainly seeing that end-to-end bit is something I think will come stronger over the following years. 2. You spoil me.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much indeed.